Hello, my name is Johan Portillo. I'm a first-year college student at Riverside City College. I'm a psychology major on the pre-physical therapy route, so very science-heavy, but very much in line with the research that I'll be presenting today. Before I begin, I want to thank the screening committee for giving me the opportunity to, present the little bit of research that I've done, considering that research is something that I really want to get involved in my future. Um, Essentially, my research project is about migraines and the bewildering nature. Now, I think it's safe to say that each one of us has experienced or has not experienced migraines in different ways, developed different symptoms, treating them in different ways. And because of this, because migraines are so different for each and every person, understanding migraines and talking about them have been really difficult for lots of people, even doctors, in terms of prescribing certain medications, understanding the symptoms, knowing how they're caused. But finding a correlation between migraines, genetic composition, and both the nervous and endocrine system really has helped researchers, scientists, and doctors all across the world understand what causes these migraines, how we can prevent them, and how we can even treat them, considering that migraines are not necessarily, there really isn't no cure for these migraines, but there are different ways to treat them and understand them as well because of this correlation. To begin, although popular and common among the general population, migraines have remained a highly ambiguous phenomenon with very serious headaches and accompanied with multiple different symptoms. According to the Mayo Clinic, migraines vary in severity, symptoms, cures, and treatments, but more importantly, how they're caused, which brings the question, what makes each and every person more susceptible or less susceptible to these migraines, and how can we actually measure these causes, and why do these things in particular cause these migraines? Now, there's environmental factors that play into the development of a migraine, like light sensitivity, audio sensitivity, but we'll actually be looking at the human body and the human body itself and how the human body itself can actually produce these migraines or make us more susceptible to the migraines. When understanding these innate causes to migraines in the human body, many researchers particularly turn to the nervous system, the endocrine system, and genetic composition. And although each one of these have been argued to being the lead cause to migraines in the human body, each one correlates to one another very well in the production of a migraine. So we'll be looking at each individual argument as well as understanding the correlations. The first argument would be genetic composition. Now, many argue that genetic composition plays a larger role than originally assumed in the likelihood of developing migraines. But when people look at genetic composition alone, they particularly focus on gender. Although there are differences, essentially men and women experience them the same way, when the same in frequency and the same intensity, roughly, keyword roughly. Both men and women experience them averaging at 1 to 4 days per month, and the intensity can also be quite the same. But again, keyword roughly, women experience migraines a lot worse than men, with increased intensity and frequency when looking at women individually. Women experience severe headaches that tend to prevail throughout their life, increasing up to 40 years, which is not prevalent among men. And the attacks that women experience are also reported to last a lot longer, 4 to 36 hours, compared to 4 to 12 hours in men, with higher relapse rates. The female sex specifically also seems to influence key clinical features and symptoms in migraine attacks, including photophobia, which is light sensitivity, phonophobia, which is audio sensitivity, nausea, vomiting, and skin allodynia, which are all symptoms, particularly in women when experiencing these migraines. Now, although it's been studied and said that women have an increased susceptibility to these migraines, understanding why has been confusing. Why are women more susceptible at developing these migraines than men? Usually, when trying to understand this difference in men and women, scientists and researchers particularly look at estrogen and estrogen hormone, which brings us to the first correlation among the three factors, which are genetic composition, the endocrine system, and the nervous system, which is between genetic composition and the endocrine system. The endocrine system is essentially one of the 11 organ systems that focuses primarily on the release of hormones and hormone activity. And of course, genetic composition determines whether you're going to be male or female biologically speaking. And if you're a female biologically speaking, you obviously have higher levels of estrogen, considering that estrogen is the feminizing hormone. And because of this, women are more susceptible to this imbalance in estrogen hormones, which then causes these migraines, which correlates and puts together the idea that genetic composition and endocrine system work together in the production of these migraines. Essentially, estrogen plays an important role in women's reproductive years in governing the prevalence, neuroexcitability, structure, and function of certain brain areas, which is suggested to be the reason as to why women are more prone to migraines than men. Like said before, genetic composition has been argued to be the leading cause of migraines, but the same thing has been said for the endocrine system in particular, which is the next argument. This imbalance in estrogen introduces the endocrine system, of course, but when focusing on the endocrine system particularly, many researchers focus mainly on menstrual migraines. Menstrual migraines essentially are migraines that women experience specifically during menstruation. Approximately 14% of women actually experience these menstrual migraines, which of course can be really intense and really frequent. There was a study done where 229 women were given a hormonal preventative, and 81% of these women actually reported a decrease in intensity and frequency of these menstrual migraines, which essentially is proof enough that the endocrine system or hormonal activity alone plays a huge role in the production of these migraines. But although there's a lot of proof in this that the endocrine system plays a key role in the production of migraines, it's really difficult to support the fact that these hormones alone produce these migraines, because these hormones have to interact with the central nervous system as well in the production of these migraines, specifically as hormones such as estrogen and serotonin, which of course brings us to the second correlation, which is between the endocrine system and the nervous system. And to gain a better idea of this concept and the unity of these two organ systems, looking back and actually focusing on estrogen alone can actually give us more evidence in this correlation between these two organ systems. Essentially, an imbalance in brain chemicals or hormones is argued to be a leading cause of migraines, more specifically estrogen in the distribution in the trigeminovascular system and the central nervous system's pain control areas. Essentially, varying levels of estrogen as well as distribution of estrogen receptors can influence excitatory and inhibitory activity in the different stages of women's reproductive life. Basically, what this is saying is that the effect of estrogen on a nervous system can actually promote the potential of migraines by either inhibiting or activating pain signals, which is of course is going to be associated with the production of these migraines that can be really intense and really frequent. The second point here states that these work on the headache pain threshold on the CSD through action on neurotransmitters like norepinephrine, dopamine, and GABA. For clarification, the CSD is essentially just altered brain activity that involves dramatic changes to the neural and vascular function of the brain. The CSD has to be activated to promote these migraines most of the time, specifically in menstrual migraines. And as stated before, hormones work hand in hand with the endocrine system and the nervous system to produce these migraines, and in this example being norepinephrine, dopamine, and GABA, which of course leads to the second correlation, which is between the endocrine system and the nervous system. Essentially, the correlation between estrogen and the nervous system specifically, or generally speaking, is indicative that the endocrine system and the nervous system work together in the promotion of these migraines. This, of course, being directly applicable to women. Although in the past it's been stated that genetic composition is the leading cause to migraines, the same has been said for the endocrine system. Of course, the same can be said again for the nervous system, which is the third argument. Many argue that the nervous system plays a key role in causing migraines, specifically the bidirectional interactions between the peripheral and the central nervous system. In other words, the trigeminovascular system, which we just went over, and the cerebral cortex. It is generally suggested that migraine is triggered by the activity of sensitized trigeminovascular nororeceptors that store a pathway toward the brainstem and the forebrain. This path, however, seems to be fully active only in migraine patients, which entails that there might be a connection between the nervous system and genetic composition, in that patients who have had a past with developing these migraines or have a genetic disposition to gain these migraines have the sensitized trigeminovascular nororeceptors as well as this pathway, which basically brings us full circle in that we began with genetic composition, we went to the endocrine system, we went to the nervous system, and now we're going back to genetic composition, which is basically a full circle definition of these three factors work hand in hand. But before this can actually function, there are predecessors to migraines, which are symptoms and key clinical features that are directly correlated to the nervous system, which makes a better argument for the nervous system alone. These symptoms can vary from problems with speech, reading, emotional responses, sensor hypersensitivity, and by observation of typical triggers such as stress, hunger, sleep disorders, and other things. A second point, which I'm not going to go over because of time as much, is basically that there's a correlation between the activation of the CSD between animal experiments as well as with the imbalance in estrogen hormones in women in menstrual migraines. In these animal experiences, though, the CSD was primarily related to the development of aura, which is a stage in migraine development that focuses primarily on light sensitivity or really insensitivity to other environmental factors that play into the development of migraines. Although these three factors have been argued to be the leading cause to migraines, it is really difficult to support a single one or either of these, mainly because of how they work together in the production of these migraines. Although there are multiple valid arguments, the most evidence demonstrates that the most likely explanation for the cause of migraines is that these particular organ systems and genetic composition work independently, working hand in hand in the production of the typical migraine. Now, although there aren't any cures for migraines, and many people believe there never will be, finding the correlation between these three factors within the human body really has let a lot of scientists, doctors, and researchers understand what can cause these migraines and how we can possibly in the future prevent them and even treat them the way we are doing now.